Hello and welcome to my channel, Code with Lewis. Today I'm going to introduce you to Tailwind, which is a CSS framework that I've personally been implementing recently, and I've kind of fallen in love with it, which is why I want to do a video on it. The goal of this video is to introduce Tailwind to a CSS developer, front-end developer, and hopefully convert them into a Tailwind advocate. So if this person is you, please do let me know in the comments down below. For a quick overview, Tailwind removes the need to write the majority of your CSS, let's just say 95% to be safe, and by using specific class names in the element tags in your HTML. Tailwind is kind of like a sort of massive pre-built database that contains all of the CSS attributes you would typically be using in your styling of your front-end server, but instead of writing the CSS, you put it as class names in the tags. So say for example you want to do some padding, you would actually write how you'd want the padding done in the element tags. Let's head over to the Tailwind documentation to have a look at how this is done in more detail. So I just want to quickly give some sort of reference for people visually versus what I'm saying, because you might be thinking, what the hell is this person talking about still? So I just want to show the sort of Tailwind website where they give us examples of what's happening here. And as I said, we have this image element here, and the classes are being added here. But of course, not even expect, we're not writing W-24 in the CSS file. That is being done for us, that is being built for us by a Tailwind watcher, which sort of sees us type this, and they create that CSS file for us, add that sort of CSS class for us in the output file. And yeah, we can just go through and see, like, font medium here. You can sort of recognize these names slightly, some of them are slightly different, but they all sort of pertain to a very similar thing. So here, this is a medium screen that's got rounded none, and that's obviously like a border radius. MX auto, so MX is the margin on the x-axis, and that is obviously being set to auto. So yeah, you can see that a lot of these things, they might look a bit weird now, but actually when you learn what they're doing, it's actually quite simple. Let's go through some of the pros of Tailwind, which I believe are many and quite substantial. So to begin, using Tailwind, it will really help you to reduce the number of files that are in your application. So for example, the Adopt a Core full stack application that I made in the bootcamp with a group of friends. The problem with that is that when it got too heavy, it got very, very big very, very quickly. And this was just an application we built in 2 weeks, never mind a full-scale production application. You started having so many CSS files within components, within pages, and within our routes. And of course, when you're doing this, there may be CSS left over when you're sort of extracting a component from a page. Maybe you have a long page and you want to reduce the size of that page code. You extract some of that into a component, and you might have residual code left over in the parent CSS class, and that may interfere with some CSS you're doing in the child class. Or maybe if you've got two similar web pages that you're using like similar class names for, of course that could affect it as well. So yeah, you really want to reduce those files because you don't want to see, don't have to be in a situation where there's leftover code in a different CSS file that is affecting code that you're doing in a different one. So yeah, reducing the files sort of automatically helps overcome that. Not having redundant CSS and poorly written CSS clogging up your app is something that Tailwind really helps to do. I saw Kent C. Dodds mention, I can't remember where, but he said that in PayPal, there was like 90% of the code base, CSS-wise, was kind of just redundant code. It didn't actually do anything. And of course, that's something you want to avoid, because you end up in the sort of cycle of pointlessly adding extra classes, trying to improve the specificity rating of whatever your sort of element selector is. You're maybe writing bang importance, adding IDs, all these sort of things. Just desperately try and change it. A Tailwind, there is no, you remove that desperation of trying to change it. by overriding and spamming just classes to try and do it. So I think that's a massive thing that Tailwind really helps with. You can add in custom classes as well. So I'm going to show you a great use case in this video where we have a nav bar that has a lot of very similar sort of attributes that we want to add to it. And here we can just create a custom CSS class that will have all these custom attributes in, and then add that to the specific elements we want to have those attributes. So yeah, adding that custom CSS is important, and exactly why I said there's 95%, the vast majority of your code will be done with the class names, but then when you want to do something very specific, you can just create your own custom CSS class. And finally, it's really good for responsiveness. In the application we're going to build, the website we're going to build, we're going to pre-program some breakpoints, and we're going to use those as prefixes to change things in our application. So when we have the typical full screen mobile screen with the nav bar that has a burger bar, we're going to have that with the class as obviously flex or block, however you want to do it to begin with. Then when we hit, say, medium size screen, but medium hidden. So it's really simple to do like that. It really helps simplify the process. That was the one thing I think, really brought me into sort of loving Tailwind, I suppose, as well as they're not writing the CSS, because exactly as I said, like in the adopt support, they ended up being so many classes and so many instances of CSS files. They start overlapping, and it just gets kind of tough sometimes knowing where things are and what's doing what, especially when you're like rushing and doing a 2-week project. If we had a bit more time, we could probably be a bit more snazzy with it. As well as pros, of course, there are some cons, and it can really complicate like a simple HTML file, and it's not as easily digestible because of that. I mean, if you think you've got all these class names added into your HTML is probably, well, it will not be as easily digestible and readable for someone, and especially if you're new to HTML, it's probably going to be quite tough to do it. So I would personally suggest, at least a decent bit of experience in HTML and CSS as well, because you need to know what you're looking for when you're looking in the documentation and trying to do what you're trying to do in the actual code. With Bootstrap, which is like a rival framework, you get sort of pre-built components, which are really useful if you're trying to build a website quickly, or you don't want to worry too much about customizing the style and having the amazing style that maybe you could do with Tailwind. It means there's a lot more room, like positive-wise, there's a lot more room for Tailwind to customize your elements, but sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you just want clean pre-built components, and that is somewhere where Tailwind lacks. We've done the introduction now, so hopefully I've given you a nice overview of Tailwind. Let's get into some coding. I'm really excited for this. I haven't done any coding live yet. So yeah, let's get into it and build a responsive website with Tailwind.